I think with parents, sometimes we see this narrative of like the grieving my loss, where they're like, my son is dead, and now I have this daughter, and now I have to grieve my son, and that is, while that could be a narrative of a trans person, and I'm never going to say that that is wrong if a trans person elects that for themselves or feels that wholly for themselves. But I think when parents put that projection onto their kid, it's super harmful. And not only that, but your child's alive. They're here. And they need your love and they need your support.
Is there anything about moving where you're like, all right, new beginnings, new...
Yeah, it's not even so much that it's like a new beginning, but it's just like, we're doing it again. Because growing up in the city and never really having like a home, but like living in like apartment to apartment to apartment, it just feels like, I'll be happy if I'm settled somewhere for 2 years, 3 years, My name is Logan Pierce. I am a trans masculine person, so I don't identify necessarily like as a man, but my presence is very masculine. I use he, him, his pronouns, and I'm biracial. I'm Korean and white, and I'm queer. I started to transition about 10 years ago, and with that, I didn't really have the language that folks have today or teens have today. So I remember incidences of like being a little kid and telling my mom specifically that I wanted to be my brother Josh and that I wanted to be Michael Jordan. I really loved Space Jam and, was told that's not possible. So growing up, in high school, I came out as a lesbian and I was like, this kind of feels right. And it wasn't until I started seeing YouTube videos of trans masculine people that I was like, oh, wait. So I came out when I was 18. I have 4 siblings and I am number 4 of 5. Everyone right away was super accepting, super awesome, loving. As soon as I told my brother, he was like, I always knew you were my little brother. And, as for my other relatives, I don't speak to my parents, so that wasn't really an issue. But my grandmother, who, she's an immigrant from South Korea, well into her late 70s when I came out and really just accepted me with open arms, was awesome about my name changing, was awesome about pronouns, was really excited to give me cards that said like, happy birthday grandson on them. So I was just extremely fortunate to have that kind of love surround me. It's swears, but this is some of my grandmother's last words. They told her she had 6 months to live. She lived for 4 years, and we had to like put her in hospice. And when we were bringing her home to do the final hospice, she didn't recognize any of us. She was coming out of this ambulance. She was like on this gurney, and she lifts her head up, looks right at the house, and says, I'm home, bitch. and so this says, the translation is I've arrived, B. Because there's not really a word for like home in Korean. But yeah, so I was like, yep, that's gonna be on my body forever. I've always just like related a lot to his style of humor and kind of just like the way that he talks about his depression and using humor as like a coping mechanism, or just kind of not even like a coping mechanism, but also it's like healing. And you could say one thing and I'll relate it to a song or a voice or a movie. And so I like to thank Robin Williams for that. and then we almost shared the same birthday, 1 day apart. So, boom, there we go. I said 1, but I stuck up 2. I'm a program coordinator, and I run a mentoring program through Lurie Children's called Trans Mentor Program, where we match a mentee and a mentor up, so a youth and adult up, that both identify within that gender expansiveness, so transgender, non-binary, or whatever that may look like. You're welcome. Hi, hello in real life. We just show that, you know, it isn't always murder and all of these awful things that we see in the media. We match these folks up to just say like, hey, this is what your future could look like.
Trans kids are just like any other kid. So there's going to be some youth that are going to have problems with depression, with anxiety, dealing with the pandemic, right? You know, those are stressors that all youth have to cope with. So the trans youth that we see in our program, they're coping with all those things, as well as any types of stressors related to questioning their identity, to trying to access and move forward with medical care, to living authentically, as well as dealing with more structural sort of discrimination when we sort of think about all the laws that are being attempted to be passed, I think, at different states around the US. Our youth feel that weight on their shoulders.
You say things like scared, that's the only thing you go, like, it's scary. And you're like, I can't talk about this, like it's no one else feels this way, and then you finally let it off and someone's like, me too, like I know that. And it's so much joy just letting all these feelings out and someone being like, I understand that. Definitely.
Is it the same way for you?
Yes. And especially like, we're probably 20 years apart, right. But we're still like on the same level. Like we have, again, this understanding of just like, be who you are and there's nothing wrong with it and you're going to be okay. Everybody else sucks, but like you're gonna be okay.
You know, we may live in Chicago and provide care here, but the families that we care for and these children, they hear these messages, right? So like, what does it mean if you're like a young trans person to turn on the news, you know, and hear the governor of a state or a state senator like declare that your life doesn't have meaning, or that your ability to get health care isn't valid, or that your desire to live like your authentic self isn't just. It's an anathema to me that these legislative efforts are ever present in 2021. I mean, I used to say that like they made me sad, but they don't make me sad anymore, they make me mad.
Okay, so like Neil said, today we're going to be talking about sexual health once again. So we honor our privacy. What's said here stays here, but what's learned here leaves here. You know, with people that are questioning, not even just kids, but just like people in general that are questioning themselves and don't have like a black and white answer, just know you never have to have a black and white answer, and you can keep evolving and exploring and doing whatever feels right to you, and what feels right to you right now might not be the same in 10 years. Doesn't mean that you're wrong or you're not truly trans. It just means that you're giving yourself the space to figure it out. And I think that's just so important. Especially as someone who was in, you know, one binary box and then leapt into another binary box, and it took myself personally quite a few years to like realize that it isn't black and white, and that there is so much nuance when it comes to gender and identity. So I think I would just say if folks are figuring it out, let that be a celebration within itself.